Hello everyone and welcome to another video of RAM This is going to be about War Thunder and the publisher details of the new update, the new incoming update 1.39. There are several things that have been explained by developers on the forums. I'm going to put a link in the description down below so you can click on it and go look for yourself. So what I'm going to do is to do an overview of what's coming and my thoughts about what's coming. As in every update of War Thunder, there are new planes, and the problem until now has been that there's always been new planes and they were always broken in one way or another. I can't remember a single plane that was incorporated into War Thunder without some serious flight model problems, but we are going to touch it later. Anyway, there are some big news for Germany and Japan. One of the most important problems of War Thunder at the moment, and one of the single most deciding factors in high tier battles for the German and Japanese, is the fact that they don't have any kind of jets which are able to compete with the Korean era war jets the Americans, Russians, and British have. And it's always been a very long debate, both in the forums, outside of the forums, in the game, about how this could be fixed. My personal opinion has always been to put a cutoff for the Germans and Japanese at 1946. Because honestly, those air forces didn't have, actually they didn't exist in most cases until the mid-50s, and the final date for War Thunder is supposed to be 1953. So for me, the best option would be to put a cutoff for the Germans and Japanese at 1946, leave them with their historical planes and leave them with historical matchmaking, so they won't have to fight MiG-15s in an Me-262. However, seems that a lot of people disagreed with that idea and they wanted some of the most advanced paper projects of Germany to be included into the game. The TA-183, the MEP-1101, well, planes that didn't even exist. They didn't even exist in a mock-up. They were just paper planes, designs on a paper that, well, were in that paper, and that was all. The problem is that it seems that the developers have decided against this idea. First of all, because they don't find, and they don't say it openly, but I think that the main biggest trouble is that they are paper planes, and adding that bunch of planes would open up a big can of worms, because if the Germans can have an Me-1101, why can't any other air force have another paper plane that didn't even exist? Also, they say their reasons to not go that way is because those paper planes would be pretty superior to the World War II era jets, as the MiG-9 or the initial P-80A or the Meteor F-3, but they wouldn't be able to compete in an equal footing with the Korean war jets as the MiG-15 or the Sabre. So, for reasons of balance and gameplay, they have decided not to go that way. Now, I totally disagree with those reasons. I don't disagree necessarily with what they are going to do, but the reasons, I mean, if TA-183 can't fight an Me-15 toe-to-toe, that's it. It couldn't. Who the hell cares? At least it's going to be a much narrower fight than an Me-262 versus a Me-15, which is happening every day right now in the game. The gap would close a lot with a TA-183 or an MEP-1101, Messerschmitt HS-3, those kinds of planes which existed on paper. They were really good for their time, but of course they were 1945 planes. The MiG-15 is a 1948 plane. Of course it's going to be much better. Same as the Sabre, they are going to be superior, but who the hell cares? at least the quality gap will be narrowed. That also goes to prove that I don't want historical matchmaking simply because it was superior planes on one side. If one side have inferior planes, well, let them have them. At least they will be competitive. The problem is that right now the German planes are not competitive, and the Japanese planes are not competitive about Korean War stuff. With those paper planes, probably they wouldn't be on an equal footing, but at least they would be able to compete. This doesn't mean that I support the idea of paper planes. Again, my idea would be to cut off the Germans and the Japanese at 1946, but that's not happening. Instead, what's happening is that the Germans are getting both a MiG-15 and a Sabre, and that the Japanese are getting a Sabre. Do I like this idea? Not really. Not really, because the Luftwaffe, the German Luftwaffe, the after-war German Luftwaffe didn't exist until 1956, which is 3 years after the game time frame. Of course, you can say that the planes they are getting are not after 1953, but still, I don't like that idea. But it's happening, and while I don't necessarily like that is happening and how it's happening, and that instead of going other ways they went this way, at least they are bringing something that is going to level off the playfield at the high tiers. Of course, really, tier 5 gameplay is going to be sabers versus MiGs all day long, which is kind of boring, but yeah, well, it's what they are going to do, so whatever, that's what's coming. Speaking about planes, they are, well, I'm going to make a list of the planes that are coming, at least that they are announced by now. Who knows, maybe there are more. Germany gets a MiG-15 and a Canadair CL-13, which is nothing but an F-86F. They also get a Focus 190 A1 that's nice. Oh, Focus 190s. And some Me-262 modifications. Now, before anyone goes ballistic about this or starts figuring that they are going to add the high speed variants, the HS1, HS2 or HS3. Me-262 modifications could be the Night Fighter version with 2 seats, could be the Fighter Bomber version with only 2 cannons but ability to take bombs. So we'll see exactly which modifications come. Those are the planes for Germany. Japan gets an F-16F again and a Ki-43-1, which is, I guess, going to be a tier 1 Ki-43, which is not a huge difference from what we have. In fact, it's going to be inferior because it's going to have less power and lighter hitting machine guns, but still, it's another plane. The British get finally their Griffon Spitfires. Spitfire 14, 18, 22 and 24. We'll see how they are put in the matchmaking. That's my only problem with these things. Also, they get the Tsetse, the Mosquito 18 with a 57mm autocannon. The US get a very interesting P-80A, which is the actual P-80 that was there in World War II. Has absolutely, well, not going to say that it has absolutely nothing to do with the P-80C that we have currently, but I've always said that the P-80C is a Korean war jet and that the World War II was the P-80A, which had a much less powerful engine and was slower, climbed worse, maneuvered worse. The P-80A actually should be a pretty good matchup for the Me-262, the German one. So that's really a nice addition, and I'm really happy to see it happening. They are also adding the F-82 Twin Mustang, which I guess all of you know is two Mustangs joined by a mid-wing section, with Allison engines, not Merlins, and it was one of the planes that really did a great job in the initial stage of Korea. I don't know exactly how it's going to behave in the game because it was a very heavy fighter. We'll see how it does. Should be very fast, that's for sure. And also they get the F-84 Thunderjet, which is a straight-wing jet fighter bomber. This was not a fighter, this was a fighter bomber. So we'll see also how it does. The USSR, of course, as always, get new jets as well, LA-174 and LA-15. Think of them as pretty much MiG-15s for the most part. Especially the LA15 was really close to Mi-15 in performance and maneuverability. The Mi-15 got into production because it was cheaper to produce. They also get the I-16 Type 24 and Type 26. So yeah, more I-16s for everyone to enjoy. So those are the new planes. Now there are of course new things coming in the new patch, and they have announced them. And the first of one is something that I think it's pretty interesting and adds a huge of potential to the game. User created content. So you will be able to design your own camo scheme, and of course I'm guessing that later on you will have to submit it to Gaijin for them to approve it. So I'm guessing that if you want a special camo for a special plane, or to replicate the camo scheme of a particular plane of a particular ace, you can do so and then submit it to Gaijin to them for them to approve it, and then I guess will be made available for everyone. So that sounds really good. You can also create missions. So set up your own missions in an editor and then fly them. I'm guessing that this will be used mostly in custom games. I don't think that these missions are going to be used in live gameplay. They are also adding something which I find really interesting. Tools for aircraft and cockpit models. Now, they are not giving flight model tools to the community, but they are giving them the tools to, I'm guessing, do the 3D models for whatever planes the community wants. Again, I'm guessing that once completed, they will be sent to Gaijin. Gaijin will decide if they do it or not, and if they accept it or not, and then they will get a flight model done, I guess, by Gaijin itself and released. Who knows? I don't know exactly what's the plan with this, but sounds like a really potent thing here, because as we all know, Gaijin is not really big. It's not a big company. They have a limited manpower, and of course they have their hands full with having new content. So if somehow they get some of their new models creation to aside and leave the community do it for them, they can concentrate on actually fixing the gameplay, which I think is a really good idea. Also, particularly, I think the cockpit model idea is spectacular. Because as you all know, there's a lot of planes in the game that still don't have a cockpit, particularly so the bombers. And really, having cockpits for bombers would make a huge difference, especially so for simulator battles, which is a game mode that everyone has to fly with cockpit enabled. And if you don't have a cockpit, you get a 3-person view instead, which is a huge advantage for whoever is flying a bomber. So cockpit for bombers take a lot of effort, take a lot of time. If they are somehow able to get some community members involved into that, because they want to spend their free time doing something for the game, that's a huge good idea. So I think this is a pretty powerful tool if they know how to exploit it. They are also giving giving access to people to the game wiki to add plane descriptions. You know, a lot of planes in the game don't have descriptions. A lot of them don't have proper descriptions and are actually wrong in some accounts. So users in the community will be able to modify those descriptions, so they are actually accurate and historically accurate for the planes in question. So I think that's also a pretty good idea. Now, more content. They are adding some new squadron content, mostly for the future. They are speaking about 1.41 adding some special kind of squadron battles instead of random battles, which I think is a really good idea. Right now, they were not really specific about it. They say they will add some events related with squadron activities. So we'll see what's that about, and well, it's always good to have something like that in the game. Especially so if you fly with a squadron. I don't, so for me it's more or less like whatever. But if you are part of a squadron, this might be really nice to have. Next is the ability to individually control different calibers of cannons. Right now, in the game, what you have is a key that you can bind for machine guns and another key that you can bind for cannons. So you can fire machine guns and cannons independently. But the problem is that if you have different cannon calibers, you'll find that in many cases it's not worth firing all of them at the same time. But right now you are forced to. For instance, think about, I don't know, Hensel 129, the German attack plane, which can mount, I don't know, it has two 20 millimeters and can mount a further 30 millimeter and a 27 millimeter. So right now, if you want to fire the 30 millimeter or the 75 millimeter, you have to fire the 20 millimeters as well, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever if you are trying to kill a tank, because the 20 millimeters are going to do nothing at all to it. However, with this change, you can bind keys to fire different cannons to different keys. So if in a given situation you just want to fire the 30 millimeter, you can do so. If you want to fire the 20 millimeter, you can do so. If you want to fire them all linked, you can do so. So that's really, really great. Also, there's another new thing, and that's finally, because there were hints about this before. You could see some things here and there in the game that pointed that this was coming at one or other stage, which is the ability to fire the whatever the inclined music mounts. I'm not going to say the German word for that. You know, those cannons which are mounted in the fuselage with an upwards angle so they can fire upwards. For instance, the Dorniers 217s should have them, the Night Fighter versions. Some versions of the ME110, when they come, the G versions, had it. The Junkers 88 Night Fighter versions had it. Some Japanese planes had that ability as well. So you will be able to fire your upwards firing cannons independently from your forward firing cannons. Well, actually you will be able to fire them because right now they are still not there. But they are going to add those. So that's kind of cool. I don't really know exactly how effective this is going to be, because these kind of weapons were really effective for night fighting, because, well, it all required for a German night fighter to put himself below a British bomber and to look upwards, align the sight and just fire away. But this was made easy first of all because it was by night, so it was a high chance that the bomber wouldn't see the fighter doing its approach. And second of all, because the British bombers didn't have a ventral gunner position, so a German night fighter could stay below an enemy bomber for all day long, firing at will. But that was British night bombers. Of course, versus a B-17, I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, because the B-17 is going to destroy anything below it with its ventral valve turret. But whatever, the planes have it, so you are going to have them. Now, flight models. Yeah, which is probably the biggest issue alongside matchmaking in the game right now. Flight models. They are promising a revised overheat model, which finally will mean that all planes will overheat as it should, instead of some planes overheating like mad and others simply not overheating, which is a big issue right now. We'll see how it works. But so far, what they say is that they are bringing a more realistic overheating model that will solve most of the issues that right now this feature of the game is causing, which is great. They are also promising a revised control heaviness model. Right now, again, it's exactly the same as in the overheating model. Some planes simply don't compress. They can go as fast as they can and the controls won't suffer a lot. And other planes, as soon as they start picking up speed, the controls become made of cement and they are just uncontrollable. So with this revised control, they are promising again all planes to have proper model of control heaviness at high speeds, and also a more fluid and less drastic implementation. With some planes, it's simply that at one speed you can maneuver and 50 kilometers faster you simply can't. So this is going to be more like a curved approach to that kind of problem. You are not going to have the massive issues you have with some planes right now. They also say that they are adding some changes to mouse control, but because they say that mouse control is not working as it should in some parameters. I don't know what they mean because they made no specifics, so we'll see what it is. And they are also promising some tools to look at the plane performances with data taken directly from the game. So it's kind of a reader where you just click on a plane, and you are going to see the performance of the plane in game using in-game charts or data. So we'll have the charts and performance charts and graphs of how the planes actually perform in the game. I think this is a brilliant idea because this will convince people about planes that perform or don't perform according to historical stats. It's also going to be a much more intuitive way to measure the performance of a plane. We'll see how it works because it's not easy. I know these kind of tools and they are not easy to implement, and probably it's going to have some problems at the beginning because, as I said, it's complicated. But the idea of having something like this in the game is really, 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 really interesting for me, and I think for everyone. It adds transparency to the game flight models. It adds easy an easy graph tool and an easy way to compare different planes, different models of the same plane. A lot of you guys still are asking what's the difference between a P-47D-25 and a D-28. Well, with this tool, one of the things you can see is how they compare and how they are different and why they are different performance-wise. I really look forward to this implementation, to be honest, because as I said, if I ever return to War Thunder and start making plane analysis again, a capture of this kind of tool would be massive and help a lot in describing how the plane performs, especially in speed versus altitude or climb rate versus altitude, because those are parameters that are very hard to figure out right now unless you actually take the time to stress test the plane you want to know the performance about, which takes a lot of time. So that's really, really, really good. And finally, about flight models, they are promising, we'll see, that the new planes will have complete flight models, and that they will have proper flight models, and that there will be some flight model changes for some of the planes in the game right now to fix them. They didn't go into specifics about which planes are going to be revised, but they did say that the new planes will have proper flight models. Well, let's see if that's true. Let's hope for once it's true, because that's one of the biggest issues of War Thunder right now. And that's the update. That's what we know right now. That's what they have announced up to this moment. Of course, this covers a lot of areas, and this covers a lot of new stuff, and some of it really interesting and really positive, to be honest. I look at the list of changes and I like them, overall speaking. There are some parts, as I said, for instance, the Mi-15s and F-86 for Japan and Germany, I would have done it totally different, but whatever, it's their game. But overall speaking, I think it's a good change. However, they did say nothing about some things, and some of those things is what is keeping me away from this game. That doesn't mean there's going to be no change about that. First of all, this is pre-patch developer notes an update for the community to know what's coming, but I'm guessing it's not by far everything that's coming. But they said absolutely nothing about the tiering system, the battle rating system, and the matchmaking system, which is currently in its worst. It's the worst part of this game with the flight models of some planes. Really, what's destroying the fun of this game for a lot of people is exactly that. It's ridiculous tiering of some planes, it's atrocious matchmaking, and there's absolutely nothing about that in the announcement. Again, doesn't mean there's nothing in the plans. I don't know. All I can say is there's nothing said by them about this. And also there's no word about any kind of change to the economic system or the development system. So nothing about increasing rewards or decreasing RP demands for unlocking new planes or unlocking parts. So absolutely no word about that. Again, doesn't mean there's not going to be any change. It just means they said nothing about it. So overall picture about 1.39 as they are promising it. If everything they said that's coming is going to come and is going to be well implemented and not broken, particularly so the flight models, if they really are good as they were and they bring proper flight models instead of the broken stuff we are used to, I think it's a positive change of positive set of changes. There's a positive, it's very positive overall. I think it addresses some big issues of the game right now. It adds a lot of interesting stuff in the game, user created content, the performance graph tools. I really look forward to those. And the impression is favorable. However, I don't think it's enough. Until they do something really serious with the matchmaking and tiering system, the biggest problem of this game won't go away. And again, I have the feeling that they are addressing the symptoms of the sickness. They are trying to cure the results of a broken matchmaking and broken tiering system instead of fixing the system. And by that I say that yes, they are adding MiG-15s and Sabres for Japan and Germany, so they don't have to face the stupid thing they have to face right now, with Henkel 162s going against MiG-15s. But again, what they are doing is not solving what's causing the problem. The problem is not that Germany has no Sabre or no MiG-15. The problem is not that Japan doesn't have any yet. The problem is that the matchmaking insists to put planes that shouldn't fight each other in the same battle. And they should fix that before introducing any Sabre or any MiG-15. There should be no chance whatsoever for an MiG-262 finding a Sabre F. There should be absolutely no chance for that to happen. And until that won't be fixed, MiG-262s will still be forced to go against those things. Of course, with the added benefit that at least you will have the prospect of moving on to a Sabre and be competitive. But the problem is, again, they are addressing the symptoms, they are not fixing the cause. And the cause is a totally wrong tiering based on balance instead of historical reasons, and a broken matchmaking. Balanced tiering system is never going to work, never has worked in any kind of proper simulator, and don't forget, War Thunder is a simulator, and matchmaking is broken. And until matchmaking is fixed, nothing is going to change in the end. There will, of course, things will be much better, and there will be a lot more things to help with the problems associated with matchmaking right now and the totally wrong tiering system they have in place, but the problem will still be there. And well, maybe one day Gaijin finally decides to attack the problem and not the results of the problem. And finally, I'm not losing hope, someday we will see a fixed matchmaking and tiering system. Who knows? In the meantime, I think 1.39 is overall looking really good. I think it's really positive. And I don't know what I'm going to do about it. Because of course now you will be asking, are you going to come back? Right now, no. My biggest issue is the tiering system, the historical matchmaking not being there, and that's not being addressed. So for now, I'm not thinking about coming back to the game. But I do think that these changes are going to help a lot of people in coming back to the game, and I think it's going to make War Thunder a much better game than what it is right now. So it's a step in the right direction, at least for me. About ground forces, they say that they are looking forward to implement them maybe in a couple patches from now. They are giving some serious thought into incorporating them for open for everyone to try them in 1.39. Personally, I don't think it's going to happen. I think tanks really need a longer closed beta, not because they are wrong in any way or shape. Of course, they are far from perfect right now, and that's why they are in a closed beta. Of course, they have a lot of things that they have to, well, toy around with and bring to the ground forces and to help making it better. I think it's in a great shape right now, but the problem is the community. There are going to be a lot of people who won't understand that if they release the tanks right now, they will be actually in a very early stage, and there will be a lot of whining and a lot of hate and a lot of misunderstandings going around the place. So for their own sake, and not because the mode is not released and not ready for release, because I think it's ready for release for an open beta. But for their own sake and to avoid them getting into a sea of insults and hate and whining and people just making stuff up, they should keep it in closed beta for the time being, to be honest. But that's just my take, that's my opinion. Anyway, guys, this has been my look into the update about what's coming in 1.39. I hope you had fun listening to it, and I hope you share your thoughts in the comment section below, and that you had fun watching this video. As always, thank you very much for watching, and see you later.